Hello my friends, welcome back. I hope you are having a wonderful day. Today, I want to tell you the story of one of the greatest travelers in history. He crossed deserts. He crossed mountains. He crossed rivers, forests, and dangerous roads. He traveled farther than almost anyone else in his time. And through his journey, he introduced many people in Europe to the wonders of Asia. His name was Marco Polo. Today, Marco Polo is remembered as one of the most famous explorers who ever lived. But his incredible journey began when he was just a young man from Venice, a city built on water, trade, and dreams of distant lands. Before we begin, if you enjoy learning English through stories, please subscribe to Everstory English. Your support helps us create more stories for your English learning journey. Marco Polo was born in Venice, Italy, around the year 1254. At that time, Venice was one of the richest and most important trading cities in Europe. The city was full of ships, merchants, sailors, and travelers. Goods arrived every day from faraway places. Silk, spices, jewels, and other valuable products passed through the city's busy markets. People in Venice often talked about distant lands and mysterious kingdoms. For a young boy like Marco, this must have been exciting. He grew up hearing stories about the world beyond the sea. He learned that there were places much larger, richer, and stranger than anything he could imagine. Marco became curious. He wanted to know what lay beyond the horizon. Marco's father, Marco Polo, was a merchant. His uncle, Marco Polo, was also a merchant. Both men traveled great distances to trade valuable goods. They were not ordinary travelers. They were brave men who crossed dangerous lands in search of opportunity. When Marco was still very young, his father and uncle left Venice on a long journey to Asia. They were gone for years. During that time, Marco grew up without them. He probably wondered where they were, what they were seeing, and whether they would ever return. When they finally came home, they brought incredible stories. They spoke about powerful kingdoms, wealthy cities, and a great ruler named Kublai Khan. Kublai Khan was the leader of the Mongol Empire, one of the largest empires in history. His empire stretched across a huge part of Asia. The stories of his court, his wealth, and his power fascinated Marco. He listened carefully. He imagined golden palaces, busy cities, and endless roads leading into the unknown. He wanted to see these places for himself. He wanted to experience the world, not just hear about it. In 1271, when Marco was about 17 years old, he joined his father and uncle on another journey to Asia. This was not a short trip. It was not a simple adventure. It was a journey that would take years and change his life forever. The travelers left Venice and began moving east. They crossed lands that were unfamiliar and often dangerous. They traveled through mountains where the air was cold and thin. They crossed deserts where the sun was hot and the land seemed endless. They passed through rivers, valleys, and remote villages. Sometimes they traveled on horseback. Sometimes they walked for long distances. Sometimes they joined caravans, which were groups of travelers moving together for safety. The Silk Road was one of the most important trade routes in the world at that time. It connected Europe and Asia. It stretched thousands of miles across deserts, mountains, and plains. Travel along the Silk Road was slow and difficult. There were no airplanes. There were no trains. There were no modern roads. Travelers had to depend on animals, weather, maps, and luck. bandits could attack. Storms could destroy supplies. Illness could spread quickly. Food and water were not always easy to find. Every day on the road required patience, strength, and courage. But Marco continued forward. He did not give up. He wanted to see the world. He wanted to learn. He wanted to discover what life was like in distant lands. After several years of travel, Marco and his companions finally reached the court of Kublai Khan in China. For the young traveler, this must have been an unforgettable moment. He had traveled so far, and now he stood before one of the most powerful rulers in the world. Everything around him was new and amazing. He saw enormous cities. He saw beautiful palaces. He saw busy streets filled with people, merchants, and officials. He saw customs, clothing, food, and technologies that were very different from those in Europe. To Marco, everything seemed extraordinary. Kublai Khan was impressed by Marco. The ruler appreciated his intelligence, curiosity, and ability to observe carefully. Marco was not just a traveler. He was also a learner. He paid attention to details. He listened. He watched. He remembered. Soon, Marco began working for the emperor. This gave him the chance to travel throughout different parts of the empire. He visited distant cities. He observed local cultures. He learned about trade, government, and daily life. He saw how people lived in different regions. He saw how goods moved from one place to another. He saw how large and organized the Mongol Empire really was. Marco carefully remembered everything he saw. For many years, Marco remained in Asia. He explored lands that few Europeans had ever visited. He witnessed incredible wealth and innovation. He saw paper money being used in China, which was very unusual for Europeans at the time. He observed large cities with advanced systems and thriving markets. He learned about roads, administration, and the movement of goods across the empire. Many of these things were unknown in Europe. For people back home, Asia seemed distant and mysterious, but Marco saw it with his own eyes. He experienced it directly. He did not just imagine the world. He lived it. After spending more than 20 years away from home, Marco finally returned to Venice. The journey back was also difficult and dangerous. He had been away for so long that the world he returned to must have felt different. He was no longer the young boy who had left Venice years before. He had become a man shaped by travel, hardship, and discovery. When he arrived home, many people could hardly believe his stories. The places he described seemed too incredible. The cities sounded too large. The palaces sounded too beautiful. The customs sounded too strange. Some listeners thought he was exaggerating. Others thought he was telling the truth. His stories were so amazing that people struggled to accept them. Years later, Marco was captured during a conflict between Venice and another Italian city. While in prison, he met a writer named Rustichello. Together, they recorded Marco's adventures. This became a famous book, often known as the Travels of Marco Polo. The book spread across Europe. Readers were fascinated. They learned about China, the Silk Road, and distant lands they had never imagined. For many Europeans, Marco's book opened a window to the wider world. It showed them that there were powerful civilizations, rich cultures, and advanced societies far beyond their own borders. The stories inspired future explorers. One of those explorers was Christopher Columbus. Centuries later, people still read Marco Polo's account of his travels. historians continue to debate some details of his story. Some parts may have been remembered differently over time. But there is no doubt that Marco helped expand Europe's understanding of the world. His adventures encouraged curiosity and exploration. He showed that the world was much larger and more diverse than many people believed. He reminded people that there is always more to discover. Marco Polo died in 1324, but his legacy lived on. His name became a symbol of adventure, discovery, and exploration. Even today, when people hear his name, they think of long journeys, distant lands, and the courage to go beyond what is familiar. What can we learn from Marco Polo? First, curiosity can lead to extraordinary experiences. Marco wanted to see the world, and that curiosity changed his life. Curiosity pushed him to travel farther than most people ever dreamed of traveling. Second, great journeys require courage. Traveling across continents in the 13th century was not easy. It required strength, patience, and determination. Marco faced danger, uncertainty, and hardship, but he kept moving forward. And third, learning about different cultures helps us better understand the world. Marco did not just travel. He observed. He listened. He learned. Because of that, he was able to share new ideas with people back home. Today, as we learn English together, we are also exploring new ideas and connecting with people from different cultures. Every new word opens a new door. Every lesson helps us see the world a little more clearly. And every step forward matters. Thank you for listening to this story today. I hope you enjoyed learning about Marco Polo. I hope his adventures inspired you. And I hope this story helped you improve your English. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and join us for more inspiring stories on Everstory English. Until next time, my friends, keep learning, keep listening, and keep growing.